My dad was not without love. But a cliched Irish mother when he wanted to be. Drinker, brawler, all that stuff. Never shed a tear. So weakness everywhere. But he had this thing for poems, poetry. Reading them, quoting them. Probably thought it rounded him off, you know? His way of apologizing, I guess. And there was one that hung over the desk in his den. It was only when I was a lot older I realized he had written it. It was untitled. 4 lines. I read it at his funeral. Once more into the fray. Into the last good fight I'll ever know. Live and die on this day. Live and die on this day.
You've landed on The Substance, a podcast aimed at being biblical, thoughtful, and human. Join us here every other week as we engage the culture without the culture war. I'm your host, Philip Marinello, and I'm really excited today to bring you another Substantive cinema. This week, we're looking at 2011's The Grey, and I've got a wonderful guest. I've got Slim from Letterboxd and the 70mm podcast. Very excited to bring this to you here. The Substance here, if you're new, we are a Christian variety show podcast. Every other week, we talk for about an hour or so. We have different formats, but we always talk about things related to faith, culture, the arts. Sometimes we do books. Sometimes we do interviews with pastors or activists or academics. And sometimes we cover movies like we do today. Previous guests include folks like movie critic Alyssa Wilkinson, Film Spotting's Josh Larson, Mike White of the Projection Booth podcast, Kevin McLenithan from the Seeing and Believing podcast, and Kansas City's own Abby Olchesi was the last Substantive Cinema guest we have here. But today, I'm really excited to bring you an episode with Slim. Slim is a guy whose work I've appreciated for a long time. Letterboxd is my favorite social media platform of choice. I actually just had a buddy. I shared my Letterboxd mid-year, like the first 6 months, stats, and one of my non-cinephile friends who I talked to, he looked at, he's like, are these your stats? Like, is this how many movies you watched this year? So watch a lot of movies, love using Letterboxd, and Slim edits all the shows. He's on many of them, and he's also the host of a show I've shouted out a few times on the podcast as well, 70mm. Every week, they just put out a wonderful show. It's probably the most fun movie podcast I listen to. I listen to a ton, and I think I even talk about it with them on the show. The community they've created is something real special. And I'll say it now at the top of the show as well at the end. The giveaway we're going to be doing for this show is not a copy of the movie itself. You can probably get it for a couple of bucks at your local vintage stock or what have you. And I'm sure if it's on Amazon, it's only a couple bucks anyway. But Slim Show 70mm, every week they have incredible original art by world-famous artist Danny Haas. The giveaway we're going to be doing with this episode is a Danny Haas original piece of art of your choosing. So I'm not sure if Twitter is still going to be alive by the time you hear this, but we'll promote that on our Instagram and Twitter if Twitter's still around. So look for that in the week or so after this comes out. But yeah. All right. Well, hope you guys enjoy my conversation here with Slim. Slim, welcome to The Substance, man. We're excited to have you.
Long time coming. Finally made it onto the big show here.
Yeah, man. I've given Letterboxd a shout out quite a few. I mean, we talk about Letterboxd a lot on the show because you guys are just not successfully and we talked about this before we recorded. It's not that Letterboxd has successfully inserted itself into the cinematic landscape. They really have added value in so many ways, and it's a wonderful thing. And then your other podcast, you're on two of my most regularly listened to podcasts here, or I guess depending on how you look at it, the Letterboxd Show has like several different shows.
Right.
Are you guys ever going to break that up, or is that I like it all in one place?
First of all, thank you very much for listening. We did a survey, so we do two shows. We have like several versions of the Letterboxd Show. It's like an umbrella feed. The Letterboxd Show has like, interviews with the creative filmmakers, and then we'll do interviews with community members about their 4 favorite movies, and then we sometimes do Weekend Watch List, which is going on hiatus.
Love Weekend Watch List.
Thank you. I love it as well. Which talks about movies that are out that weekend. We try to help plan your weekend movie watching, but I was kind of nervous about having so many shows on one feed, and we did a survey at one point. Do you mind having multiple Letterboxd podcasts on this feed? And people didn't mind. So, and then I always kind of remind myself that like podcasts like The Daily and other, Wall Street Journal has a podcast that has like, 5 episodes a week. So maybe it's not that bad that like you have multiple shows in a feed. It's not that big of a deal anymore.
And I mean, so I have not a long drive, but I have a drive every Thursday morning. So Weekend Watch List is always like an immediate listen. And sometimes every now and then, depending on what I've got going on, if there's an interview or a top 4, I'll save it for a few days. But no, I love it.
Right. I mean, you can just not listen to it. If people think there's too many shows, I'm not going to listen to that one. I do it all the time. Everybody does it.
That's true. I mean, it is rare. I've been really in like a very heavy movie podcast right now. I do need to branch out and kind of be a little bit more well-rounded, but I mean,
listen to some of those supernatural ghost pods that I listen to. You got to branch out, see what people are investigating in their free time.
Hey, that could kind of fall under Substantive there a little bit.
That's right.
You guys got me curious about your that show that you guys talk about.
Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah, I saw it and I was like, do I want to start that?
It's funny that you say that because we were talking about it on 70mm and about how we love it. And like my wife and I were just watching the newest episode and we've hated the last 3 episodes. Like we were like wondering.
Once you've gone public and converted everybody, then it's trash.
I'm like yelling at the TV.
You broke your rule. You broke your rule. So you're always like, don't talk about TV you watch.
I don't like announcing what I'm watching because it'll just blow up in my face somehow. But so
that's
maybe
hilarious.
It's happened. It finally did come full circle and ruined it for me.
Haven't watched it. Far too much content.
There's a lot of stuff out there.
Far too much.
Yeah.
But thankfully, like 3 of my big shows just ended. So I've got
one of those Succession. Yeah,
Succession, Barry, and Ted Lasso all ended in like 3 or 4 days of each other.
It's finally I can stop hearing about them on my Twitter feed.
It's so interesting because it's so well written, but like at the end of the day, you're like, none of these people are good, and like I don't want any of them to like.
Right.
It was such a strange phenomenon.
Sure.
Like I loved it. It was captivating. It was incredible writing, but then when you step back for like 1 second, you're like, everybody sucks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like a lot of prestige TV is like that. You're sucked into people that are generally pretty terrible, but you're entertained.
Yeah, like kind
you keep watching.
Walter White and Tony Soprano were very interesting, but then everybody's like, okay, like complicated bad guy, and then it's just everybody.
Right. Yeah, that's the way of the future with these prestige TV. I guess it's the way of the past too with the 2 shows you mentioned, but people can't get enough. They can't get enough.
So The Gray. So this is one I've had it on my list. I've got, I don't know, probably over 100 on my potential substantive cinema lists on Letterboxd there. But I always like to come up with things that are not the first things you would think of when you're like, okay, because I mean, we've covered like Your First Reforms. We covered a bunch of Terrence Malick on the show, Paul Schrader, stuff like that. But then do like Your Matrixes and Everything Everywhere All at Once but then this one, I was like, I don't know anybody who's talking about this. Like, I did some Googling. There's a couple people on YouTube that have little video essays on it, but I was like, this is one that I kind of felt like I've just kind of had in my back pocket for a while. I was like, I think this one is ready for a comeback. It looks like it's not on any streaming platforms. Were you able to watch it easy?
Yeah, you made it easy for me. You shared a nice little digital redemption code for myself. Otherwise, I would have rented it. But yeah, I feel like I've seen it streaming sometimes, but I think we just caught it in one of those times where it wasn't readily, hit the play button. You're ready to go. Yeah.
So I'd love to hear from you. And I thought that this would be a perfect one for you because on the Letterboxd Show, you're always self-deprecating with all the capital C cinephiles everywhere. Like, I'm just the Jean-Claude Van Damme guy. It's like, Slim's kind of like the action kind of. If that is his lane, I feel like this one would be perfect. Had you seen this?
I'd never seen this before. No,
okay.
I don't even. I feel like the Liam Neeson era passed me by. To be honest, you would think
like the post 2007 or 8, like when Taken came out. It just
the Taken era. Like I wasn't even really in the Taken era, which you would think I probably would have been because I watch all of those awful Steven Seagal movies and I eat them up.
I grew up with those. Yeah, exactly.
And you'd think like a modern day version of that would be the Taken Liam Neeson, but for whatever reason, I guess I just wasn't into it when it happened. So, and this one as well, I recognized the poster, but I had never seen this, and maybe because I chalked it up as to being one of those. Oh, it's one of those Liam Neeson revenge movies.
He had different probably setting. Like 10 to 20 of them. Like,
get paid, my man.
Exactly. Like I've seen probably 25 to 50% of them, but I feel like most of them are interchangeable.
Mm-hmm.
Like you got your amnesia ones, you got your missing person ones, you got your CIA agent who's trying to live a normal life, who left or whatever. And I mean, most of them are pretty interchangeable. But I remember when I saw this one, I think I'd only seen it once or twice back in 2011 when it came out. And I was like, wow, like, beyond the setting, like that's the thing that action movies sometimes do, right? They're like, this one's set on a boat or in the snow or like just have the setting be the unique draw. But I remember going, okay, like Liam Neeson fights wolves. Like that's an easy one-time watch for me. But I watched it. I was like, wait a second. Like, is this kind of a really good movie actually?
Yeah, it's so weird because I actually didn't even know what to expect. So when I think you suggested this, I feel like I couldn't remember. There was probably something else about this movie. And even when I started, I was like, I wonder how they even marketed this movie because it's like a Liam Neeson.
Taken with Wolves is kind of how they marketed it.
Yeah, that's what I was curious about because if you just market it as kind of like a Liam Neeson survival movie with like some potential, deeper like storyline, that's probably like a really hard sell and probably nobody would go see it, or at least you wouldn't get the Liam Neeson Taken fans to probably go see it at that point.
No, I rewatched the trailer this week and it was very adrenaline pumping, and it even had a couple of shots of like wolf violence that wasn't even in the final movie. Like it was like a rock music playing like survival action movie. Which I mean, there were scenes, like we can talk about it when we get to that. Like that stuff was done very well, but it was kind of like a sneaky good movie.
Yeah. It's like under the radar. Yeah. So for this viewing, I one of the main things that jumped out at me actually just was the style of the movie. Most of the movie was just not what I was expecting, I guess, is the shortest version to say that. And I mean, maybe that's my own fault actually, maybe it's Liam's fault for doing so many Taken movies to trick me into thinking it was different.
I think in the casting of Liam Neeson and in the promotional materials, not in a disingenuous way, but I think they were trying to subvert some of those expectations, or maybe subvert isn't the right word, but to take those and harness them and kind of like like when you're trying to feed your like little kids healthy food by putting like sprinkles on top of it,
right,
something like that for a mass audience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I liked it a lot. I liked this. So this is my first viewing. I love the direction of the movie.
Yeah,
Joe Carnahan?
Joe Carnahan, who I remember seeing Narc and thinking that was okay, and Smoking Aces thinking it was forgettable, and then going like the guy who did Narc and Smoking Aces, and the A-Team just the year before, which I liked. We get all these terrible franchises that have 1,000 things. I was really kind of ticked we never got a second A-Team movie.
I can't remember anything about that movie. The only thing I can think of was that the same year Starsky and Hutch came out.
It was 2010, I think. 2009 or 10.
Bradley Cooper, I think, was in it, right?
Yeah.
In the A-Team. I saw the wiki that
Charlton
Bradley
Copley,
Cooper,
the guy from District 9.
Yeah. I think Bradley Cooper was originally slated to be Liam's character in this movie. It was like
he was. They were fighting over it. Bradley Cooper was cast, but Christian Bale was trying to get in there.
Oh.
But then the story, one of the stories I heard, they were just at dinner on one time while they were making the A-Team, and Liam heard, I guess, Bradley and Joe talking about it. He's like, what is this? Like, let me take a look at it. And he's like, hey, do you think there might be anything in there for me? And eventually they kind of worked it out to, I couldn't imagine anybody doing it better than Liam Neeson, frankly.
Interesting. Yeah, I remember Narc. I think Narc, that poster is burned into my brain. I think I remember seeing that poster a ton growing up. So as I was watching this movie, I was like, who directed this? Like, what is going on here? And then I saw like, oh yeah, that's a name I remember. And I remember
kind of
Narc.
Sadly, I hope he's happy with his career. This movie is incredible. I like the A-Team a lot. Narc and Smoking Aces were what they were, but like, this is not a guy who's seemingly gotten to really get to do a whole lot.
I saw that he was the executive producer. He directed the pilot of, was it The Blacklist? It's like a show that like my mom watches.
Yeah, on season 10 or 11 right now. I just saw they got. I swear I thought that show was done, and then like I saw an ad. It's like, is this still on like season 10 or 11 premiering? I was just
that could be. You could say season 20, and I would believe it. The amount of speed that they pump.
I think
these TV
NCIS
shows
is probably on season 20.
That's another show my mom watches a lot. But so like that, and then I saw that. I guess he might be friends with Mark Millar, the comic book creator, and he had written the script for one of those books, Nemesis. Remember that comic book?
Yeah, and is that getting the Netflix treatment?
And then he was in talks to also direct that. So, but I don't know. Like, I feel like I might have heard that rumor maybe 10 years ago, and nothing has
supposedly,
happened since then.
Everything in the Millar World series of books is supposed to be coming to Netflix.
The hype behind that guy is dissipated quite substantially, in my opinion.
Every now and like I go between rolling my eyes hard at him and just being like, you know what, man, you do you. Like, I'm rooting for you. Go for it, guy.
Sure. I mean, remember that like during his heyday in the comic books. This has nothing to do with Gray. Sorry, everybody, but his heyday in the comic books, like he was untouchable.
Yeah,
like
and
for
he was
so
all
many
original.
Years. And every idea that he had was like the coolest thing ever in comics. And then, you can't really strike gold every time. I mean, he did for a while.
He did over and over and over.
Yeah. And then, and then he signed a deal with Netflix. And I don't know. I haven't seen anything. I haven't watched personally. I don't think I've watched any of his stuff on Netflix. But right off the bat, like one of my favorite scenes in The Gray is the airplane sequence.
My goodness.
That was crazy. All
right. Before we get to there, what did you think? I know that at LB headquarters with Master Gardener coming out, I know Mitchell did the interview and they had the piece. When I was watching this again the other day, I was like, oh, he's starting it off, guy at a desk drinking, like writing a letter to somebody. I was like, this is kind of
Paul Schrader-esque.
Yeah, in that Schrader-esque vibe.
Maybe this fits in the Schrader universe adjacent.
Yeah, I was like, this could kind of get packaged with it a little, like.
Right.
But no, that I just thought that was kind of funny as he's kind of writing his attempted suicide letter that plays pretty importantly. But yeah, to talk about the plane crash, I don't know if I've ever seen a plane crash filmed quite like that.
Yeah,
not that they do it a lot, but it was very well done.
Yeah, that I think this might be the scene where I started to search to see who the director was, because the way it was shot was, well, also just overall the film grain, like the way that the movie looks, it just looks very dirty and grimy, which I really appreciated. It's not like a pristine looking film, very much, not a lot of sunshine to really just like show off the clean nature of the film. It's dark. It's like grimy looking. So you see that stuff in like the plane, when the plane goes down and people are like flying out of their seats. He's buckling himself to 3 separate seats because he's knows what's about to happen. And then there's the one shot of like I think the plane goes upside down at one point, and then you see his face looking out.
But it's on him, yeah.
And you see everything outside of the plane, like
he is the it's like inside the plane, and he is the focal point, and all the stuff is kind of happening around him.
Yeah, just amazing setup. And I think by that point, I was kind of like sitting up a little straighter than I was before. I was like, oh,
which in that scene
here
went right into one of my. They kind of showed it in the trailer because it's a nice little moment, but I'm just impressed every time I see it. I love the shot where he is, after he gets thrown from the plane, he's hallucinating or dreaming that he's back with his wife, who we learn has passed away. And then like he goes to hold her hand and he's ripped out from his bed, like back into reality in the snow. I was like, this was nicely done.
Yeah. Very well done. Yeah, and then even like him walking in the snow to kind of like find where he is, because he wakes up and he's like not in the plane at all. He has no idea he's surrounded by snow, and he just starts like walking to see what's around him. And he like walks up this hill, he gets to the top of the hill, and then he finally sees the plane wreckage. And at that point, I was kind of like wondering, is the majority of the movie like this almost like a live script where it's just these dudes trying to survive in the frozen tundra? So I actually had no idea how much of it was, that like, are they just going to be in the setting the whole time fighting off the wolves? But I mean, I think it's like 2 hours, maybe it's 2 hours or just under 2 hours.
It's 157 minutes with like 8 minutes of credits. So it's about 110 actual runtime.
Yeah, longer
than I
longer thought, but they do space out like the events in the movie very well, because you have this like this cast of characters that you have to work through. Unfortunately, like I'm sure because they don't make it out as well as they hope. I want
to. There's a couple different aspects of the movie I'd love to get your thoughts on and talk about. How about the death that kicked off the death in the plane, where Liam Neeson basically is kind of giving like almost like secular last rites to the guy who like is clearly like bleeding out bad, and everybody's like, oh, like we want to put him at ease. He's like, you're dying, like you're gonna die now.
Yeah, that was brutal.
I've never seen a scene like that in a movie. I mean,
they gave it time to breathe too. They gave that whole scene time. It was like felt like a 5-minute scene of them. It was just a couple minutes helping this guy just like go through it there, because there's no getting out of it. And they gave it plenty of time. So that was pretty powerful.
No denials, no kind of false hopes, just kind of really kind of beautiful in its own way. Like, and the way the movie frames it with several of the deaths is they're kind of going into their rest, like big, like cosmological, like a lot of them have family members or loved ones, like people that have gone before them, kind of ushering them into their next state of existence, whatever that is, whether it's going into nothing or consciousness or whatever it is. A lot of them will have some sort of manifestation of somebody who has been important to them, kind of bringing them forward. And that's visualized several different ways. Like each person kind of gets their own one of that. And again, one by one, as you watch this, you go, this has got Liam Neeson fighting wolves in Alaska, trying to survive. But it also has these like incredibly profound and moving scenes that are deep, that ask the main questions, but are also not very preachy or like trying to apostatize or like preach a certain thing beyond, I guess, transcendence, like the reality of something greater than ourselves.
Right. Like there was a few times where I wondered if what we were seeing with them was actually happening.
Sure. Like well, sometimes it clearly wasn't, right?
Yeah. Like with them, maybe like, wait a minute, did they actually survive? Is this like, are they all together in some kind of, post-living state where they have
to when you deal with plane crash stuff, there's always those theories, right?
Because there's like they did each have that moment at the end where they did go through something. So I was like, I wonder if this is like, are they all in the same space right now, or if there's something else happening? But that wasn't the case as you go through the film.
I watched a couple of interviews just looking at this, kind of digging into that some. Joe Carnahan and Liam Neeson did this one interview that I thought was really excellent. I might even link it in the show notes if anybody's interested. But they purposefully themselves, in the work that they did writing it, they established none of that. Like they wanted it to be like an open canvas for the audience to ask questions and kind of bring their own meanings. Like he's saying, somebody just the other day asked me, like, are each of the other 6 guys like different aspects of Liam Neeson's personality because they have their own thing? And he's like, I don't know, do you think so? Maybe. Like I just wrote it, and like it felt right, and we didn't really interrogate it at all. Like they didn't even talk about that amongst themselves. They just wrote it.
Interesting. I was looking at my notes, and one thing I didn't call about the plane scene was like, remember when it got really cold in the plane and everyone's breathing? Like you could see your
the
breath?
Visualization of that.
Oh my God. I'd start crapping my pants too if I was on a plane and
you see the systems clearly failing.
Yeah,
like
everything
you know that
slowly breaking.
Oof.
Golly. No, thank you.
Yeah, that one guy shooting his mouth off.
God, that guy was so annoying.
I think he was the first guy to die
that,
out of the plane.
Yeah, the one guy was cut in half and he took his belt, because remember the one guy got injured, he had to like tighten up the wound, and there's just like that
gnarly
body sitting there. Woof.
Yeah, just a pair of legs.
Yeah. And he gets attacked by the wolves pretty soon after the crash.
Yeah.
I think it's like that first night. And that's a scene where I thought was a dream, because he's like it looks to me like he's getting bitten by the wolves for a while. And I was
Liam
like,
Neeson?
yeah. And I was like, you better wake up from this dream, Liam.
Yeah.
But that was real.
He got bit, and it was on the leg, and he was fighting it off. But yeah, no, that was, and I always kind of like it when they do that, to give you like a real stakes, because it's sometimes a completely mindless action movie can be fun, but it is nice when it's grounded. Like there's a reason that Die Hard is like the perennial classic, like the everyman who can be hurt.
Right. Yeah. He's bloody for the whole freaking movie, walking around barefoot on glass. Like,
yeah.
You know.
Well, and you talked about the way the movie was shot. I didn't realize this till kind of digging into it some. They had actually a pretty decent budget, but everything was real. They shot more or less on location. The elements were real. Like none of it was fake snow. I mean, there's a couple of bad CGI bits of fire, but like everything was real. Like they were in uncomfortable circumstances, pretty much making, like when the snow was falling, that was really how it was going. Like there is almost a sense of like, how did they get it this well? And they just kind of put themselves through hell for a month as they shot it, kind of out there in the wilderness.
Yeah, I think also one of my favorite things too about the movie is the way that they portrayed the wolves on screen. Like, it's got to be pretty difficult for them to come up with a way that makes it look realistic. But
Greg
a lot
Nicotero
of it
is working his magic.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is in the shadows, or just the way that they're filmed, kind of just like from afar. Like, there's one scene where you can see their eyes in the darkness, you know, surrounding them, and then they retreat back where you can't see their eyes anymore.
How good of a shot was that?
It was amazing. So much style in those moments. Because I mean, you get some kind of like lower budget movie, they're probably not going to care as much in those moments, you know,
or they're going to show you the wolves too much.
Yeah,
and just be like, here's growling jaws every other scene.
And then also when that one guy gets murdered and they're eating him, and I think you can see the shadows of that happening on the side of the plane. Like another great stylistic choice that worked really well.
And when they were walking away, like the bloody tracks, like it was cinematic, and it was obviously probably a little bit over the top, but it still felt grounded enough to where you were following like the bloody paws as it walked away. You're like, this is, again, they did not have to go this hard and put this much effort into it. And how about that guy who got it when he took a pee break? Like that's
I would never leave the group at that point.
Or leave the airplane.
I would never leave Liam's side. I would be like on his ass this entire trip.
Guys kind of jockeying for position came. It's like, no, like this is the guy who the company paid to protect everybody. This is the guy with the experience. And kind of interestingly, like thematically, like he is set up as like the hunter, the protector. But at the very beginning, like he's at a real low spot. Like he's about to take his own life. And kind of ironically, what saves his life at the beginning is he hears the howl of the wolf, and he's like, well, I guess I got to go back to doing my job and protecting these bozos. Like a wolf at the beginning of the movie is what saves his life. And then the whole rest of the movie is him struggling against them. Yeah.
And which brings it like with that, tying that into, and I don't mean to skip to the end, and maybe we'll get to it later, but even that, like there's that post-credit scene that I didn't even know existed. Did you see that? Did you watch
at the end of the credits?
Yeah, there's a post-credit scene.
Oh, geez.
I've
seen this movie probably
because like at the end of the movie, you know, it sets up the big battle between Liam and the wolf, and kind of like him thinking about the quotes and the poem and all that stuff. It's not like a gigantic scene, but at the end of the movie, there's a 3-second shot of Liam post-battle with the wolf, just kind of laying on the wolf on his body, and them just breathing together.
Just bloodied, victorious?
Yeah, like well, no, they're both alive. They're both just kind of like laying post-fight on each other, and that's kind of how it ends. So
kind of like two alphas recognizing each other, kind of.
Yeah,
thing?
and I actually like that as the ending.
Oh, shoot.
Maybe more than the quick cut ending that we did get. And I know we're skipping over a ton, but I think it connects pretty well with like the reason why he didn't end things in the beginning of the movie.
Interesting.
But I like that. I like that kind of connection between the two, and however you want to view that connection of that kind of like not relaxing, but just that
Acceptance.
Symbiotic relationship.
Well, yeah, because that's some of the deeper themes of the movie is like life and death, like life being a struggle against death or to avoid death, and kind of how the material life is not exactly like death isn't necessarily completely the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And like how there is beauty. A lot of the people were viewing death at the end, many of them as going to their ultimate place of rest, being with their people. Some of the men were men of faith, or you just had Frank Grillo's character like just kind of sitting and going like, my life is what it is. It's not great, but like being a part of this created world, like this is a beautiful, like nothing in my life is more beautiful than this view. And like just that scene was brutal, man.
Mm-hmm.
I teared up a couple times in this movie.
But I mean, even with the themes of like how they viewed death, and like you could even say that like the depression that Liam's character was going through, like those wolves were almost like that depression, you know, manifested in this moment, like how there's almost no getting through it. Like you have to almost kind of accept it and deal with it. And that's why I think I guess both endings work, but like him confronting it head on and kind of taking everything that's happened in the past in that moment. And I think that's why I really enjoyed the post-credit scene of like, you know, there's going to be those times where it's it's post-fight, you know, where everything's maybe a little bit calmed down, where you do fight things head on and you maybe come to a place through however you get there where there's that downtime and you don't have to worry about the fight anymore.
Yeah.
So
well, and that is such a nice button on the end, right? Because I do really like the ending of, it's like, okay, like impossible obstacles ahead of me. Like I'm going to face it head on with courage, grit my teeth, like face it head on. And his father's poem, which again, I'm a sucker for, and like, it's barely even a storyline or like a plot point. Like you have the little flashback and the sepia tone, him as a kid on his dad's lap and being a dad who's not really good, but trying his best, and gave his son like one thing that kind of, and that one thing that he latched onto is what helped him kind of get, that was like his anchor for his whole life. But going, okay, like live and die on this day. Like I'm the full experience of humanity. I'm not going to deny any of it. If this is my death, I'm going to lean into it, like bravely face it head on, see what happens. And then with the button at the end, like, I mean, obviously he's probably not going to become like part of the wolf pack or whatever, but just to have that moment of relief and acknowledgement, I thought was that. Thank you for letting me know. Audiences, I guess, pay attention, watch to the whole.
I mean, how many people are going to be watching The Grey otherwise and be like, oh, I wonder if there's a post-credit scene in The Grey?
Yeah,
I'm
usually
stick around for the
Liam Neeson
like
action movies are not typically where you find. No. I almost said straight to video. Not at all. Do you know? What do you guess? So this came out 2011. What do you think the budget of this was?
15, 20 million maybe?
Yeah, it was 25. I'm sure some of that was the hard environments and maybe some of the salaries.
How much did it make?
80.
Really? Holy smokes.
I was stunned. I was like, did it even make it back its budget? I checked the box office first before I checked the budget. And I was like, holy crud, it made 80?
Wow.
It made $80 million.
Was this before or after A-Team?
This was right after.
Okay. Because really, A-Team's like rating on Letterboxd is like bad, isn't it? Isn't it like 2 point something? I never hear about A-Team anymore.
I would say 5. I'd say that's a solid 4.
2.7 on Letterboxd.
Okay, 2.7. It's closer to 3. Give it another watch.
Quentin Rampage Jackson in this movie. Jessica Biel, Patrick Wilson. What the? There was another death too that was almost like exceptionally brutal. Was when they're being chased by the wolves, and they find like that stream nearby. The one guy trips and falls into that stream, which turns into like more of like a, it's exceptionally dangerous if they're going in there. And then he gets his foot stuck underwater.
Foot entrapments are
terrifying. My God, that was awful to watch, that entire scene. And he's trying to give him oxygen too. He's trying to like save his life. I mean, watching someone drown in a movie is not comfortable, to say the least. But that was just another moment where like, all the BS is like happening to Liam, and just like everyone's getting destroyed, and he can't do anything about it.
I mentioned this in my Letterboxd review. I love that. So in my mind, the guy in the plane at the beginning who kind of set everything off and then kind of gave him his peaceful like let it wash over you. Like, this is your time. Embrace it. Like, go with the flow. That one, Frank Grillo just kind of sitting there, accepting it, kind of like letting himself be known, because he was always kind of the rude, brash kind of guys. Always, the first time you see him in the movie, he's punching another guy in the face in the bar. He's drunk. Right. He's belligerent. He's the one driving the fight. But then he kind of opens himself up to be known. And I love the little detail. It's almost corny. It like just like goes up to the precipice of being corny. How he and Liam Neeson, they have the same first name. Like how they all know each other by their last name because they have their jobs and their last names. And they're both named John, and they have their little moment. I was like, that's like just enough. But
he's the one who mentions too that he saw him that night, right? Like he saw was that
no,
the
that was the other guy.
The other guy, yeah.
I like that. He dies, too. And then there's only two left, and the one guy who's left right before he gets the foot entrapment, he's the one who kind of calls him out on that.
Yeah, good scenes. Good scenes. We skipped over the wolf decapitation scene too.
Oh man, that was
that guy needed a cool out. My God.
Well, in the scene after that, that'll probably be what I imagine I'll rip for the audio at the beginning of the episode. Typically, like you think of movies that have like all male casts, like in an environment where they share the same job. Like I love the little scenes of like actual camaraderie, and they all know that they're probably just screwed. They all know that it's probably done, and they're just sharing like the highs of their life. Like what could they live for? Like what are they using to get them to go forward? Like, what did he say? Like the things in your life that make you want to make it to the next minute more than the last. Like, and they're all kind of sharing those. And Frank Grillo's like, well, the last woman I was with was kind of busted. I'd like to not go out on that one. And everybody's giving him grief, but like they're all kind of opening up.
Yeah.
And I love that scene.
Yeah, that was a good scene.
All the deaths that really stick with you are not really even wolf related at all. For a movie that's billed a team of a bunch of guys has a plane crash and they have to fight wolves to survive. Like, man.
Yeah, man. I'd be curious. I was reading some of the, reviews at the time that this had come out. I think Ebert wrote a positive review, and there was a thing on Wikipedia that allegedly said that it was the only time after seeing this movie, it was the only time he left another screening because he kept thinking about the movie he had just seen. And he didn't want to like do a disservice to the movie that he was actually watching at that moment. So he left.
Wow.
So that was pretty surprising. So I think, all that to say is he was surprised by.
Well, again, it's not billed as something that you would think terribly highly of. One of the things that was most surprising to me in that interview that I mentioned, it was like a 30-40 minute interview with Liam and Joe. They were like, Joe said, he's like, this is absolutely the best movie I've ever made. And so, I mean, Liam Neeson's been in some really big stuff. He's like, yeah. And I don't think he was just saying it because he was there in the movie. He says,
Liam said this?
No, Joe said it. And then it went over to Liam. He goes, this is probably my number 2 movie I ever made over Schindler's List. He said, number 1's Michael Collins because he's like, I'm an Irishman and this is about the founding of Ireland. So I feel kind of kinship to that. But this is probably number 2. Wow. Schindler, yeah, that'll be number 3. But like Liam was very connected to it. I don't know. Do you know? I mean, in my mind, you're a Liam Neeson. You would like Liam Neeson because you're Steven Seagal and Jean-Claude Van Damme guy.
I'm actually looking at his filmography because I'm curious if didn't he do a Scorsese movie?
Yeah.
That was after.
He did Silence and Gang. Well, he had done Gangs of New York previously where he played a priest.
That's not as good. Well,
No,
yeah,
it's not.
I was
I
gonna
like
say-
it.
I was gonna say
Underrated.
the Silence movie hadn't been out at this point, so I
No,
was curious.
Silence
Like,
came out.
I was gonna
recently.
say if Silence he had done. Not that I love Silence, but if he had said that this was better than Silence, that probably would have raised some eyebrows. But yeah, I'm looking at his filmography. Taken. God, he's got a lot of.
In 2009. So this came out. I think they filmed it right after A-Team in late 2010, early 2011. Liam Neeson's wife actually passed away in 2009. So he was like portraying this guy going through a depression after losing his spouse. Like he's like, that's kind of what I think he initially connected to and really like vied for the project and took ownership of it. I don't know if Bradley Cooper had other stuff going on or if they
Right.
just really clicked on it, but he's like, this is something that I have to do. And he fought for it until he got it.
I did read too that like I think he asked Liam, or maybe I don't know if this is true because it seems like a weird thing to ask, but I think he asked him to think about that while he was writing the letter. In those scenes. Man, he's in a lot of movies. I'm going through his filmography.
Oh my gosh. Especially
Holy
like
smokes.
post Taken is almost like that Nicolas Cage joke of like his agent's voicemail just says yes. Like
I'm not even like at that point. I'm like pre-Taken, and there's a ton of stuff too. I just watched The Haunting for the second time in my life.
oh yeah, he was in the remake of that, wasn't he? Seen that
Darkman,
once.
great movie.
Darkman. I've been on a Sam. Okay, so that was another thing I was going to say at the intro. I forgot. Slim, in addition to producing two of my favorite movie podcasts right now, you are currently responsible for The Shape of My Movie watching this year. I got and we share the same top 3 stars and top director. Tim Heidecker, Greg Turkington, and Joe Estevez are my top 3, and Natar is my top guy right now. Sam Raimi is right behind him, but Eric Natar at 8 films. He's my most watched director. I'm trying to knock him out a little bit. I don't want to not give him the props because I'm like, man, I've enjoyed the heck out of his work. But I remember on your year-end episode, they're like,
I know.
who's your top director? You're like, Eric Natar.
Back to Liam. But yeah, so like
All right, back to
the his filmography with Scorsese was later. He's done a lot, but admittedly, like I think I've only seen 8% of his films according to my Letterboxd stats. Yeah, he's got
he's got like over
169.
100, I think.
Good
now,
grief,
right?
that's a lot.
Some of that is probably internet crap, though. I do love that Letterboxd has that. Some of that crap is probably like Funny or Die skits or whatever. It's still creeping up on 100. Yeah, no, I love this. This is one that I am going to be evangelizing to people.
I wish.
Hey, have you ever
and
seen The
hopefully
Grey?
it comes back to streaming. Like even if it's like Pluto or Tubi.
Well, and when I saw that it was $25 million budget, 80 million gross, I was like, why isn't there like a 2-disc Arrow Blu-ray
with the
4K
amount of crap
of
that
this
some of these boutique
super loaded
Blu-rays
out?
places put out? Like let's get The Grey on there, some steelbook, some like new design poster that's not just Liam Neeson's face in the snow. I do know some people.
Hey, you got the connection, Slim. You can make that happen.
So like and we're sticking around like the ending, like when he gets into the den, he finally thinks so. Like there's one scene where also there's one scene I want to mention too where like the wolves are howling in the distance and you can see their breath through the trees. How amazing was that scene? Yeah, that was cool.
I loved that.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I wish I could have seen that in the theater. I'm going to see actually. So we're publishing this. By the time you're listening to this, it's probably a month or so after we recorded this. I'm going to actually see if I can pitch, because I just hosted a screening of Raging Bull that actually corresponded to an episode that we did here.
Yeah,
I'm going to see if I can be like, hey, can we get a showing of The Grey and do just a bunch of cross promotion here? Like, I would love to see this.
And then he,
on a big screen.
I thought in my head when he crosses that little ridge or that hill, you hear a noise. I thought it was like a truck. I thought he had hit a road where like a tractor trailer was coming by, but it was the wolf.
He had found
the
salvation,
the alpha wolf. And he realizes that he walked into their den. He sees all these bones scattered about. And that's when everything pretty much comes full circle. We kind of skipped over the one scene too, where he has that moment where he's like,
after the guy had the foot entrapment, and
didn't he say he was like an atheist
raging at God
early in the movie? But then at this point, he's pretty much just like, no, was there another character?
He didn't say that. They were all arguing about like the merits of faith briefly. because like they were living in the he said something very pragmatic, but I don't think I think he said something like
right.
this is real.
Yeah, I thought that was
like,
fascinating.
What's
He
here
kind of
matters.
does like yell out, like, now's the time to show me that you're out there, and in that moment nothing happens. Right, yeah. Sure.
Like, prove it to me. Like,
and then
like,
he goes in the
oh,
den.
yeah. That was getting. I was like,
yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, I'll like have to do it myself. And that is something where whatever personal baggage is relatable, no matter what your personal faith history or your current belief system is. Like, going through hardship and difficulties and pain, like, that is something that even deeply devout people of faith, like, that's like the big thing that people are always pressing on, right? Is like, we call it the problem of evil, like the theodicy question, like, why does a good God allow evil in this world?
Right.
Like, why is suffering, like, if there is God, why is suffering part of his ordained world? And that's a good question.
Right.
It's an impossible question to fully answer, but it's something that because we all endure hardships of various kinds, that we all have to come up against that. And regardless of what we believe, we have to come up with a system that we lose hope. Plenty of people don't do that, right? And they either don't do anything. Some people end up giving up or just kind of existing or taking their own life or what have you. But if you are like putting your one foot in front of the other, it's usually it's God, or it's relationships, or it's like something in the aesthetics, like nature, beauty, art. Like, there is something outside of oneself that we have to be connected to vitally in order for there to be meaning, and that thing that Liam Neeson says, like, that makes you want to have the next moment and engage in it purposefully.
Yeah, for him, it definitely felt like that part of his life was his wife, and that's what he was struggling with so hard. And yeah, that was a cool scene where he kind of just like loses it and then decides, all right, it's just up to me. Which, you're right. I think so many people who believe different things, like that is their kind of support system. It's themselves. You know, if they're not in that kind of group, then yourself and your belief in yourself is your support system. So I thought that was conveyed pretty well in those scenes, and especially when he got to the den. So, and I referenced it earlier, but yeah, that scene and the wrap up post credit scene, I thought was a pretty nice bow on that storyline.
Yeah, no, and that's something I would be very curious to see, like, just the reaction, like, because Ebert, I think, was a previous Catholic, and it's so interesting to me when you have people who come from the religious world and transition into making their life's work in the arts, and they, in various, I mean, you guys, I loved your Faith Month. I loved your Last Temptation episode, and Danny's art was
amazing.
Insane.
On that episode. Yeah,
I almost got that one. Do you ever buy the art, or does he ever send? I'm sure you could probably have like
he sends us copies.
It.
We'll make like specific requests, and that they'll appear in our doorstep.
That Last Temptation one was.
We joked about. I can't remember if we said this in the show, but we joked about
sending them out to.
Let's just print this out and send it to local churches.
I'm sure some people, like, if you did it without any text, I'm sure
nobody would notice.
People just hanging it up.
Wouldn't even notice. They would just sit in like the vestibule somewhere.
Some people would be like, "Is that Willem Dafoe?"
But yeah, like on 70mm, we had that month where we watched, spiritual adjacent movies, and that was fun. So my pick was Interstellar. We did The Last Temptation.
Oh my gosh, maybe my favorite poster.
Yeah,
like that was. I mean, we always like. You always talk about how unreal Danny's art is. That Interstellar was.
Yeah, he went hard.
The hardest I've ever seen him go, I think.
and we had, I think, but last year we had done a mailbag, or maybe the first mailbag episode we'd ever done for our supporters. We talked about, someone had asked us, I think, about like our upbringing and our religious background. And
yeah, I heard that one.
We all like have different backgrounds. So I think those episodes were really fun to kind of like, investigate, the meaning of certain things and how we interpret them, and how, everyone kind of interprets things their own way because of their support system. Like, I think I mentioned that I was pretty much agnostic in much of where I am now. And everyone is just kind of in different places. So approaching those movies, I thought was a pretty fun exercise, and just fun to talk to your friends from different backgrounds and different belief systems and things like that.
Yeah, no, that was a blast. I was really, I was like, I wrote down all these ideas. I was like, I should send in a VM for Last Temptation, but I was like, I don't know if I could keep it short, and I don't want to write. Like, I don't think I can write all my thoughts on an email. And Pro's like, well, you could send it in later, and I was like, I don't want to send it 2 months later. Here's my thoughts on The Last Temptation.
Yeah, I think Silence. I think Silence was also probably talked about. Like, Liam has this like Jesuit, cinematic
he's done
history.
it a bunch. Yeah, He's got The Mission. He's got Silence. He was the priest in Gangs in New York.
Yeah.
He was basically God.
Something to investigate there.
He was Aslan in the Narnia movies.
Yeah.
Like,
I probably said in the mailbag, but like my mom's uncle, Father James Martin, was at one point one of the oldest living Jesuits, and was the oldest living Jesuit priest on the East Coast for many years. So my family is like deeply rooted in like the Jesuits, and their history, and just that kind of like section of, I guess you could say Catholicism. So my upbringing is like really rooted in that stuff. So that's why I think I have like that kind of like vested interest in movies like that, like the Jesuit stuff, and like how the Jesuits, went over and tried to bring so many things to people that didn't have that.
Sure.
But yeah, like, I don't know, but I didn't connect with Silence as much as I was hoping. And I think,
okay. I didn't on my first viewing either. If y'all ever do Silence or The Mission, man, I'll jump on that one. And that's what I like. I mean, back to the gray. It's not even slightly preachy.
Right. Yeah.
Like, we all inherently like, I mean, there are sociopaths out there, but I mean, like, we all inherently go like, human life has value, like beauty and relationships and the things that we do for one another, like, that is good and it has value. And what do we do when that gets tested? Like, how do we answer that question? Like, what makes us put one foot in forward the other when that's really tested? And that's really what the movie, Liam Neeson fighting wolves, like, to like an action movie soundtrack in a trailer, has got you thinking about that. And I just go like, man, that's just so impressive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
it reminds me too of like the current trend in horror and like prestige.
Sure.
I know people get annoyed with that word, but like prestige horror and like therapy and double meanings in prestige horror. This one is kind of like similar, but it's not like
an elevated action movie.
Yeah, it's like not so overt. Like, you can kind of like think to yourself like, oh yeah, I guess this is kind of like, you could see it in different ways. And I guess, I mean, yeah, elevated action. Is there such a thing?
Yeah, it's like Hereditary or Us or something. Like, this is the action movie version of that.
I don't think if anyone has ever said elevated action in the history of like cinema watching. I feel like
I watched plenty of them, and I know you watched plenty of them. I couldn't think, which is why I was like, I'm going to keep this till I can get the right guest on, and we're going to hopefully turn everybody else on to the gray. And it's a blast. The action stuff is thrilling. But then it's also a really beautifully shot, like the transitional scenes look like a Disney or a National Geographic documentary. Like, it's a beautiful landscape, which kind of juxtaposes like the horrors and the hardships that these guys are going through. Like, it's kind of a really special little movie. I'm kind of like one of those little miracles. You're like, that was just kind of a perfect bit of inspiration, and everything kind of worked out. There's a couple of janky CGI bits, but like,
not too much.
It didn't really bother me at all. So what's your, I saw that you didn't rate it.
No, I don't even think I logged it yet. I think I forgot to log it.
No, log it.
I think I might give this 4 stars.
Nice.
Yeah, for the gray.
I like it.
What about you?
Yeah, I'm 4 and a heart. Like, I thought about the 4.5, and I might. Like, I think what it set out to do is perfect. Like, it's not as complex as like a Silence or a Last Temptation or First Reformed, but I think everything it set out to do, it did it well. It asked its goal was to like prod and poke at the questions, but also not even. It was meant to be a good time, like kind of like a poem. Yeah, no, I loved it. 4 stars
Yeah.
and a heart from me.
Great pick. Great movie.
Thanks, man. All right, shout outs. I know you get to watch a lot of stuff before other people do, but what have you been watching that you let's keep it to movies. I know that you've got your television superstition. You don't want to wreck it for yourself
I
or
don't
others.
want to ruin it. I mean, I literally
no more
just
Skinwalker Ranches.
No, I'm not doing it again. I literally just saw The Flash on Monday night.
Okay. I saw I got a heart and a tentative. I'm trying to figure it out.
I'm not giving it a rating just yet. I think the Flash stuff is difficult. You know, Ezra Miller has got a sordid past. I'm sure people are conflicted about whether they want to give oxygen to the Flash, and it's kind of tough too because I love comic book movies, and this is supposed to be kind of like the reset of the DCU
again. Yeah.
For the millionth time. So I'm curious what the public at large will think of it. I think DC fans are gonna lose their minds, honestly. But I thought it was fun. I thought it was super funny. I think it's the funniest DC movie I can remember seeing, easily. I mean, I guess that's an easy bar to jump over because what else? What do you have? Suicide Squad, and then that's probably it in terms of laughs for the DC movies.
Yeah, no, I feel like I haven't even seen them all. I felt like Shazam was mildly amusing. I didn't see the second one.
No.
The Suicide Squad, probably. I didn't see the Harley blah, 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 birds or whatever. That looked amusing too with Ewan as the bad guy, but I didn't even see that.
No.
I'm just so deeply unmotivated to watch their stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think Shazam was the last thing I saw.
I hope this is the kickoff for brighter pastures.
That's
because I'm already kind of just tuned out for the Marvel stuff, so I'm ready for something new in terms of comic books. I always love those stories where they ask Charlie. I'll see in my news apps, Charlie Cox interested in playing Daredevil again. I'm like, no crap that this guy would like to play Daredevil again. Yes, I'd also like to have a payday, a guaranteed payday for a year,
and for forever.
Yeah.
You get residuals on that. Yeah, if you're in a movie. Yeah. Well, yeah, he was in for 2 seconds at the Spider-Man.
That was a nice little cameo in that one. But otherwise, I think The Flash is the big one. I have a screening invite to see Asteroid City next week.
Well, hey, I've found all 7 things so far. Maybe I'll get one here.
Oh, nice. Too. Very cool. Yeah, the scavenger hunt's a lot of fun. I think I might have a screening invite to see the new Insidious Part 2. Patrick Wilson's directing that.
I was going to say, I just saw he directed it. Yeah, Insidious.
His directorial debut. If this posts a month from now, maybe by the time this is out, Patrick Wilson will have been on the Letterboxd Show and talking about his 4 faves. So that's another reason why I'm able to see the Insidious directorial debut ahead of that interview. So I like the first Insidious, and I like Patrick Wilson. I love the Conjuring movies. Maybe not
those
the
are
last
all
one so much.
Ooh, maybe we could get somebody. I bet one of those could be a good, kind of out of left field substantive cinema. I haven't watched any of the Conjurings, Annabelles, Insidious.
You've never seen Conjuring?
No.
Oh, Conjuring for a while was my favorite horror movie when that first came out. So those are my shout outs. Not a ton recently. Been doing a lot of editing at LB at Letterboxd, so not a ton of watch. Oh, but I did listen to some director's commentary for the Mission Impossible movies.
I like that one a lot. That's the 4th one. I just read that earlier this week. I was like, that makes me want to. I've never listened to any of the Mission Impossible. I'm a big commentary guy, but I've never watched any of the Mission Impossible ones.
It's very good. The first one they did together was great. I listened to the Fallout one. I didn't love as much. I didn't log it, mainly because I didn't have any kind of fun nuggets to pull out of it. But I do want to rewatch Fallout as well ahead of Dead Reckoning Part 1. I'm pretty excited about that.
When I saw that you logged it, because I'm not a patron, I don't change my I'm just a pro. Or wait, pro?
Yeah,
I can't change my posters. Mm-hmm. But I thought you got to see the new one early, and I was like, what? Oh. And then I was like, okay, he was watching the 4th one with the commentaries.
Yeah. I mean, maybe I might be able to get to see the new one. It depends.
I'm very excited about
We'll see.
That.
There's some things in the works.
Are you Team Barbie or Oppenheimer here?
I don't know. I saw the trailer for Oppenheimer, and I said this on 70mm, but the trailer is just so loud. It's so loud. I'm not that old to complain about the audio levels.
Yeah. I felt the same way. I laughed when they were razzing you, but I feel the same way. Chris Nolan, man, just
It's just so loud. Like, let's turn it down. We don't
Just a
need to
little
be
bit.
that loud. Like, if I was wearing an Apple Watch, I feel like it would warn me about like the audio levels in the room.
Yeah, it's dangerous for your ears.
Me personally, like, I could easily not see Oppenheimer. I definitely want to see Barbie. So I think I might be Team Barbie for me.
I'm absolutely opening weekend. And if I can get a good IMAX screening, I'd like to see it. But yeah, the last couple Nolans I did, I liked him enough. Like, he's a big spectacle guy, but I can't wait for Greta Gerwig's new movie.
Yeah, I love Greta. Yeah, I'm excited to see that.
So Slim, I will put the Letterboxd Show and 70 millimeter in the show notes there. Is there anything else? Where can people find you? What do you want to point people to that you're proud of or want them to check out?
What am I proud of? I'm very proud of 70 millimeter. Very proud of Letterboxd Show.
You should be.
Thank you very much. If anyone is looking for yet another movie podcast, we try to approach it from a different angle. You know, we'll have a different theme every month, and each host picks a different movie that week. It's not really a critics podcast, more of a discussion. We're not fancy pants cinephiles. We don't pretend to be. We're just normal folk. And Danny, one of our co-hosts, is very talented. He creates beautiful artwork for each episode. We sell prints of those, so we're very lucky to have Danny on the show. Also very lucky to have Proto, and we built
original art for every single episode that like goes hard.
Yeah, there's no other pod doing it. I'm very proud of that fact as well.
He's doing professional level art for every single episode.
Yeah.
And you can get some. Ron got me for Secret Santa. He got me a print, and he framed it too of the thing that I've got.
Oh, really? Oh my God, that's a great poster too for that episode.
That was good. I was going to maybe talk about that too. Like, I felt like a little bit of not exactly parallels, but we've covered the thing on the show previously, and it's like guys facing their mortality and in an icy thing. I was like, I'm kind of getting those vibes.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's very true.
There's the wolf that plays.
Yeah, that dog is amazing. I saw that they recently made a toy of that scene.
Ooh.
I think it was at NECA. Put a toy out of that like monster dog. Oh my God,
I want it.
The comments on the IG post for that were everyone was just generally appalled.
Animal lovers.
Yeah, they're like sense. It was like the most like haunting scene of the whole movie, and they made this like action figure set of the thing.
I borrowed a VHS from a friend's dad, far too young. I think I was probably 4th or 5th grade when I first saw that, and that made an impression.
Yeah, I would imagine so. But yeah, so 70 millimeter, we built a great community of like-minded folks that are looking for an outlet to talk about movies. So for folks that are interested, give us a shot.
Yeah, and I'll throw I've mentioned it before, but I'll throw my recommendation behind that as well. I listen to so many podcasts. A lot of them are arts and film related. 70 millimeter currently, and I mean, I do like, I'll buy merch and I'll hit people up on like PayPal or Cash App. 70 millimeter is the only regular show that I'm a monthly supporter.
Oh, thank you very much.
It's a blast.
We try to make it worthwhile. You know,
love the Discord.
This is hard earned cash. It's nothing to be trifled with.
Well, appreciate it. Appreciate your time, man. And yeah, put it in the show notes. Check out 70 millimeter and Letterboxd. And
thanks for having me on. It was fun. Glad I can check off the gray from my list finally.
So there you go, your old pal Slim and myself talking Liam Neeson, talking the Gray, talking what it means to live and die well. Who knew that an action movie, plane crashes and wolf fights could be so substantive? So hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. And if you're new to the show, we've got dozens of other previous Substantive Cinema episodes if you want to look into those. And I think soon we should have our top 10 most downloaded episodes. And if you enjoyed that conversation and you're interested in more, in being a part of more substantive cinema, books, things like that, conversations going forward, we'd love to have you join us in support. The link in the show notes. It used to be Anchor. I'm getting used to saying Spotify for podcasters. The link there in the show notes, you can sign up for I believe $1, $5, or $10 a month. We know these are strange and difficult times, but if this is a show you enjoy, want to throw us a couple bucks a month, that is the place to do it. We appreciate everybody who does that. And I believe, speaking, since this is a Substantive Cinema episode, we haven't announced it yet, but I think soon, anybody who signs up at $5 a month or more, I think we are going to be doing, I don't know if it's going to be quarterly since we do bi-weekly episodes. Like every 3 to 6 months, folks who support at $5 or $10 a month will be able to vote to pick one of the movies. I don't think we're necessarily going to go into picking guests to go with them. But yeah, so that's something to look forward to here soon in the future. Or if monthly support is not something you're financially able to do or interested in, but you're like, hey, I dug that episode, I want to give them a few bucks, you can do that on Cash App at $TheSubstancePod. So if you want to reach out to us, give us feedback on the show, suggestions for future topics, books, activists, guests, other movies that you want us to talk about, you can send us an email or a voice note to thesubstancepod@gmail.com. If you send us a voicemail or a voice note there to the email address, that's 60 to 90 seconds, and we like what you have to say, you can be featured on a future show. But that is the way to reach us. Thank you guys for listening. If you dig the show as well, it costs $0 to give us a 5-star rating on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to that allows ratings. That helps us. But even better, share the show with a friend. They don't have had to watch the movie before. But if you do, you can maybe host a little movie night, get together, be like, hey, and then I also got this cool episode to show you. But if you like the show, you like what we do, share it with a friend. We appreciate it. Well, guys, that was a blast. We look forward to seeing you guys here next time on The Substance. Tell everybody about it. I look forward to...
This is the moment for everyone to give it a shot.
The slim stamp of approval on Letterboxd, people adding it to their watch list. You'd be like, all right, Mitchell, what do you imagine? What's in the top 10? The Gray from 2011? That's number 8?
Mitchell's probably got a Blu-ray 4K wrapped on their shelf right now of The Gray that they maybe haven't even opened yet.
I bet they do. I went to Half Price Books to see what they have. There's just like a really basic Universal one that has like a short behind the scenes and a commentary. So it is ripe for Arrow or somebody to give a nice one.
Does Mitchell have this logged? What's Mitchell's rating?
3-star. It did not work as much.
How long is that review though? Mitchell's been reviewing stuff on here since like it might have been even from 2012. Let's see. 2012. 2012. I wonder on a
revisit it. Hey, give me a shout out if you guys revisit it. The great reassessment of The Gray.
Yeah, on Shelf Life.
I've pitched Mitchell more than once. Hey, if you ever need a guest, if Shelf Life is a thing, I'm starting to get we've got publishers sending us books. I'm starting to have publishers send me like the Blu-rays to get reviews of, and I was like, I can't start all these things on my own, but I was like, if you guys are doing it, I can jump on and I can talk about supplements. I love supplements.
Yeah, Shelf Life's a really cool column. Katie does a great job, and Mitchell too is the editor. A lot of great stuff on there. Did I share this in the VHS Village Discord that I met Eric at the film?
Not that I remember.
Where was I in LA? I went to a Indie Spirit Awards, and it was this might have been before that, but Nathan Fielder was there. I think Nathan Fielder's show was nominated. Nathan For You, or no, whatever the new one is, I can't remember.
I still need to watch the rehearsal.
Was I think
I still need to watch
producer on that show, and they were walking through, and I yelled to Eric and said that I love On Cinema. And he came over and we chatted for a few seconds, and it was just me, essentially I just wanted to give him props for all the hours of entertainment that I've gotten from that. And this was, I guess, right before the On Cinema Oscar special. So I was trying to get some information from him about that.
I haven't watched the last couple. I haven't bought my membership yet, but I probably should here soon. I watched everything on YouTube. And this is an aside, Dave. You can chop this off, throw it at the end, or maybe at the bonus blooper at the end. But The Trial is one of my favorite things I've watched this year.
4 hours of The Trial.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't on my first viewing either. If y'all ever do Silence or The Mission, man, I'll jump on that one if you want.
The Mission was another watch. Why did I watch The Mission? Was that a shuffle on Letterboxd Show?
I think it might have been, but I don't know if Imprint sent you one because they just did the Roland Joffe set.
Yeah, I think Silence, I think just left things, if I remember correctly, it left things almost like too open-ended, which I
had a lot of friends, like in my faith circle of friends, a lot of people were unsettled by that movie.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, what happens to Liam in that movie is not great.
Yeah. Well, and
all that happened to people in real life. So.
Like Andrew Garfield, like this isn't a Silence podcast, but like the end of the movie, I think and this is again for you and the 70mm listeners who are maybe jumping on for this one, like my background was not as strict and as fundamentalist, but like Danny and I come from more similar circles. So those are some of the people who I know. And yeah, like Andrew Garfield's ending of like faithful apostasy just I feel like broke everybody's brains. Like just like, and that's a very provocative. I bought the book after I saw the movie. I haven't read it. I'm going to read it at some point. But like that's just a very just like Last Temptation, like very provocative, like literary twists that like make you like ask these questions that maybe don't have a neat and tidy answer. Is this kind of a really good movie, actually?
You got this, Dave.
Are you Team Barbie or Oppenheimer here?
First, one take Wilson. You got this, Dave.